is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today I'm here with Mike Partsch, the WARF Chief Venture Officer. The Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, WARF, was created by the University of Wisconsin visionaries to enable the university researchers to solve the world's problems. As the designated patenting and licensing organization, they've helped advance transformative discoveries to market for the past century. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Well, tell us, what is WARF? What does that stand for? What does that mean?
So WARF is the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation. And when I first heard that name, I imagined a building full of labs doing research. That's not the case. We are the outsourced tech transfer office for University of Wisconsin-Madison. UW-Madison is one of the largest federally funded research institutions in the country. About $1.5 billion of federally funded grants flows through the university labs each year. We own all the IP that comes out of there. We manage the intellectual property. We license it to industry. We receive royalties back on that intellectual property, and then we grant back to the university a grant every year on the order of about $100 million or so, plus or minus.
Great. So tell us about WARF Ventures, where you work. What exactly is that?
Sure. So WARF Ventures, we support WARF's overall mission of supporting the university and the research in science and technology on the campus. We do that in a couple of different ways. First, we selectively invest in startups coming off of campus and help those technology startups get to market. So we provide capital, we provide management advice and experience. And so we help those companies develop and get those commercial products to market. In addition, we provide returns to WARF in the form of exits from our portfolio companies' liquidity events. Those returns to WARF go to the general coffers, which again, get returned back to the university in the form of grants.
So where did WARF come from? It started 100 years ago, but what started it?
So about 99 years ago, researchers on campus discovered that if they irradiate certain foods, they can increase the amount of vitamin D in those foods. This was a tremendous breakthrough because it would allow them to eventually cure rickets, which was a terrible disease at the time. So some alumni came along and thought, we should license this valuable patent to industry. At the time, the university was focused surely on academics and not wanting to muddy itself with the commercialization process. That seemed something that should be left to businesses. So these alumni got together and they formed WARF in order to commercialize that technology. We were the first technology transfer office in the United States. And we've over time built up an endowment of our own capital, which we use then to fund our operations, innovate the way we commercialize technology, and grant back money to the university every year.
So what is the mission of WARF? What exactly are we trying to do here?
So we support the university in a couple different ways. First and foremost, we're their outsourced tech transfer office. That means we take disclosures from inventors on campus. An inventor working in a lab comes up with a breakthrough. They disclose that patent idea to us. We evaluate it and determine whether or not it can be patented. If it is, then we then contact the patent office. We file the patents, own the intellectual property, and then manage that process of licensing it out to industry. We then return royalties back to the campus in the form of a grant every year. So we sort of form this twofold mission. One, we provide a service to the faculty members, taking their patents and commercializing that technology. And then we grant back to the university, as I said, a grant every year. Most of it is an unrestricted grant that the university can use to help direct further research in technology and science.
And so how do you fulfill this mission? What exactly are you doing?
Well, we license those patents. We collect the royalties, and we then return that capital to the university. So we specifically provide them the capital to invest in other forms of research, lab equipment, new hires, et cetera, to help them be able to fulfill their mission of doing research and furthering the Wisconsin idea.
And so what's the mission on the venture side? Do you have any financial targets there?
We do. We have to outperform the return that we get on our own internal endowment. If we're not able to do that, then there's no reason that we should exist. We have to outperform that hurdle rate. So, we have a sliding scale depending on how much of our performance metrics we need to hit. We need to get about a half a percentage point above the trailing 10 years performance of our endowment.
And so how do you work with the university-based startups in particular?
We evaluate those technology startups to see, one, are they venture backable? Do they have a credible business plan? We give them advice where we can. We don't invest in every startup that comes off of campus. Those that we find compelling, we then will make a venture investment in those companies, usually alongside significant co-investors. So we will require the company to bring syndicate dollars to the table. Now, we have extensive Rolodexes. No one uses a Rolodex anymore, but we have extensive contact lists of VCs that we reach out to co-invest with. So we will help in the fundraising process where we can. But we want to bring in savvy, sophisticated, deep-pocketed co-investors with us so that we have others to share the financial risk as we go down the road.
So how do you manage the nonprofit nature of the university throughout this process?
That is a great question. We're constantly, measured on a performance metric of generating returns on our investment, and yet we're a nonprofit. So our portion of WARF is focused on generating those returns. So while we are not a for-profit entity, we do have to return capital on our investments. So we function exactly like a typical venture firm functions. In fact, the reason I was recruited from the Bay Area was my number of years out in the West Coast working in venture capital and in startups, understanding that ecosystem and taking those skills, those metrics, those procedures, and implementing them here in our venture team.
Well, many VC funds have a 10-year cycle on it. Are you limited to that as well or no?
Well, we invest off balance sheet. We don't have your typical limited partner structure. We have one limited partner, and it's WARF. So we do invest off balance sheet. We have, I guess you could call it a fund, if you will. It's an allocation of capital determined by our board of trustees. We invest that over a roughly 3 to 4 year investment lifespan. And then we have to go back to the trustees for a new allocation of capital. Meanwhile, those investments we made, we're in the maturation process. So it's the typical lifespan of a fund of 10 years. Your first 3 years or so are the investment cycle period, and then you start harvesting those investments. So we make investments on roughly the same time frame, about 3 years, and then we start exiting those companies over the next 5 to 7 years.
And so what are the benefits of doing all this inside the university environment?
That's another great question. One of the things I found very attractive and compelling about WARF was we wouldn't have to fundraise. We have our own capital that we use. We also have a tremendous research entity right there, literally right outside my windows in front of me, the campus and all of their labs. So there's a significant amount of research that's going on there that leads to some tremendous breakthroughs. And we have an in-house intellectual property team that not only understands the patents, but they did the filing. They understand the market sizes, the potential competitors, who are the industry players that we need to reach out to when we're looking for co-investment or for acquiring our technologies. So we have a tremendous number of resources that many other universities don't have for a venture fund. Many other venture funds don't have the intellectual property resources that we have here at WARF in order to evaluate technology. So it's a really unique set of assets that we bring to the table when we look at investing in our startup.
And then on the other side of that table, what are the challenges of working in the university environment?
Well, like every university, UW-Mass has got its own levels of bureaucracy and administration that we deal with as we interface with the university. There's nothing different about this university than others, but we interface with those folks as well. Also, we're dealing with a lot of faculty, inventors, and founders of startups. They're used to operating on an academic timeline, academic schedules, very different than an entrepreneurial one. So there's a certain amount of education that we have to perform and provide to those academic founders about the entrepreneurial process, because those people are used to dealing with an academic setting, operating on those timelines and those schedules. Very different in the entrepreneurial world.
So what do you find WARF Ventures investing in these days?
Our portfolio mirrors very similarly what goes on campus. Roughly 2/3 of the grant money that the university receives is in the healthcare life sciences sector. And so that ratio, 2/3 healthcare, 1/3 not, reflects itself not just in the grants, but also in the patents that are disclosed to WARF, the discoveries that are disclosed, and then the startup companies that we invest in. So roughly 2/3 of our portfolio is healthcare related. And that spans medical devices, diagnostics, therapeutics, healthcare IT. But we also have everything else that is researched and discovered on this great campus. And so that includes quantum computing, fusion energy, kinetic tech, computer science, engineering, material science, many chemistry products. We have a very diverse portfolio of companies.
So WARF is located in Madison, Wisconsin. What do you find great about Madison?
Madison is a great town for a lot of reasons. It's just the right size. We have about 500,000 people in the greater Madison area. We are a university town, huge university campus here. So you've got all the benefits of a university environment. We're also the state capital. So there's a lot of infrastructure and other benefits to being in the state capital. So it's a wonderful place to live. You do have to prepare for the winters. January and February can be a little chilly here in the wintertime. But other than that, it's a great place to live.
Great. Well, so how does WARF Ventures team source new relationships?
Well, being that we are in Madison, Wisconsin, we're pretty far away from the epicenters of venture capital. You think New England, New York, on the West Coast, San Francisco, of course, San Diego, LA. We're pretty far from those locations. So we get on the road quite a bit. We go to trade shows and conferences. There's a lot of venture conferences in the Bay Area that we attend, New York and Boston as well. So there's pretty much every week, someone from my team is on the road meeting with other investors in those places. We can't expect them all to come to Madison. So we go to them. We forge those relationships. We share with them all the great things that we're doing here at the university, here at WARF Ventures, share with them the portfolio companies that are fundraising, and we are bringing those dollars into our companies. When I started here, we had about $7 of outside investment for every dollar of WARF Ventures capital deployed. That number has increased now to about 17 to 1. So we more than doubled the amount of outside investment in our portfolio companies since we've initiated this outreach to the VCs on the coast.
Well, so who are some of your follow-on investors?
We've brought in a number of groups, both strategic partners and traditional venture capital firms. Let's see, off the top of my head, Partsch Ventures has come in. Sands Ventures has come into one of our deals recently. Deerfield has co-invested with us in a number of our portfolio companies. Venture Investors is a local Madison venture firm that we've co-invested with, Madison and Ann Arbor. Vensana out of Minneapolis is one that we've co-invested with. We have a number of strategic partners. Exact Sciences has co-invested with us as well. We have some other larger firms that are deep in diligence right now that are about to make investments, we think, so I can't go into those. But we have a number of relationships we've built with firms and strategic partners on the coast.
And so what kind of technologies does WARF Ventures pursue?
Well, on the healthcare side, as I mentioned, we have a lot of medical device technology. The medical physics department on campus is one of the best, if not the best in the world. That's led to a number of breakthrough technologies for us to build companies around. Back in the day, about 20 years ago, we started a company called Tomotherapy. That was a fairly large success in the intensely modulated radiation therapy space. Currently, we have a company called Leo Cancer that's also in the radiation therapy medical physics space. That one's a tremendous blockbuster in our portfolio, doing really, really well. We've created our own therapeutics initiative. So traditionally, whenever inventors on campus come up with a biological target, that's something you can't patent. So they would publish that breakthrough or present it at a symposium, and pharma companies could come in and develop a drug against that target and reap all the upside. WARF decided that they should create our own in-house academic biotech. We recruited drug hunters from industry, and now we are developing our own in-house biotech compounds, which we are currently in the process of negotiating licenses with industry partners right now. So we've got radiotherapeutics, medical devices. We've got a number of diagnostic modalities that we're developing, as well as I've mentioned, quantum energy, quantum computing, fusion energy, computer science. We have everything, runs the gamut of what you could see on a major university research campus.
Well, of all the technologies you mentioned, what would you consider to be the best technology that you have a core competency in?
Asking you which of your children is your favorite. I love them all. They're all wonderful in their own special way. As I mentioned, medical physics is an area that we excel at. So that's an area that's generated a lot of interest in strategic partners for us with regard to our technologies. But we're also, as I said, we're developing some in-house drugs that are looking like they could be blockbusters. So, healthcare, we definitely have a strength in healthcare. But computer sciences is one of the largest majors on campus. And so we're starting to see a lot of new stuff popping up out of computer science. So really, there's not one thing that we focus on. It's everything across the board.
So there's many ways to approach venture. You can do it from a financial angle, or you can do it from a team, or you can do it from other activities. What is your approach to investing?
Well, our approach is, we meet fairly early internally around all of the disclosures that come in, and we flag which ones we think are destined to become a startup. So the process starts very early for us. We're aware of the technologies that could be a startup pretty early in the process. We track that development of that technology. Are the patents getting issued? Is there interest from industry? Is there interest from an entrepreneur? And then we're able to fairly early in the process engage with that entrepreneur, help them, identify the market needs, steer them to building the resources that they need to successfully launch a startup coming off of campus. So we're fairly active and hands-on in the company creation process. We actually have an accelerator program that runs under the venture program here that helps provide non-dilutive capital to those technologies that are still projects. They're not companies yet, but they are projects that need to be de-risked. So we have some non-dilutive capital through the accelerator program that de-risks those technologies to the point that they're ready to be venture backable. And so we're very hands-on in that process. It's a collective one WARF effort to get a good license in place, build a solid company, build an investment syndicate around that, and then help the company, launch for success.
So how does tech transfer work here, and how is it different from other places?
So the tech transfer functions here the same as every other university, with the exception that WARF is actually a separate entity. Most universities have tech transfer in the university. It's an office within the university that reports up to usually a chancellor, vice chancellor of research, or provost, et cetera. In our case, we're a separate nonprofit entity that owns the intellectual property. We, as part of our mission to support the university, function as that outsourced tech transfer office. So we function the same way as any in-house tech transfer office does, except we're not part of the university. We're a separate entity.
Well, great. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here today, what else should we cover that we haven't?
We've covered a lot of ground, but I would suggest that, if anyone's interested in learning more about WARF or our WARF Ventures portfolio, to check out our webpage, warf.org, www.warf.org, and they can see our portfolio. There's a link in there to the Ventures portfolio, and they can reach out to me. My email is on the website. They can reach us at any time and inquire away.
Well, great. We'll include your contact details in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Halty Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.